Right, hello guys, and welcome to today's video. And that 360 symbol on your screen means one thing and one thing only. We're playing a classic COD today, and today we're going to be playing some Black Ops 1, but that's going to fit in with the topic we're going to talk about today, because if you haven't guessed by the title and thumbnail, we are going to be talking about why old COD DLC needs to be free. More specifically, when these games, of course, come to the Game Pass. We've got some information coming very, very soon at the next Xbox reveal event, which is meant to also follow on to talking about next year's Call of Duty game, that being probably Black Ops 6 or whatever Treyarch's going to call their next title. But in that as well is going to be discussion about how old Call of Duties are going to be added to the Game Pass, probably when that's going to happen, how that's going to happen, what games specifically. All that information is going to be coming very soon. But I wanted to talk about why old COD DLC needs to be. Doesn't just like as a fan thing, like where we want it, you know, because it's great. Free stuff is awesome, of course. It needs to happen for many different reasons. So I'll talk about the first reason, which is one that I wasn't actually aware of, because specifically for myself, I've never played Call of Duty World at War, which is why, you know, when all these games come to the Game Pass, it's going to be great for me. I'm going to get to experience Call of Duty World at War for the first time. But more specifically, World at War has a massive issue that requires DLC, not just like it's a want for people, you know, to be able to go back and play these maps that were great and released, you know, probably didn't have the money at the time to be able to buy those DLCs or simply weren't able to. World at War has a function where basically you search for a game, and regardless of whether you own the DLC or not, you can find that DLC, like you will matchmake into that DLC. And if you do, you basically have to quit, because it will try, you know, you will try and load into the game and you won't. It will kick you out because you don't own that DLC. And that's not okay. That's something that needs to change, because how many people are going to sit there, install World at War for the Game Pass, and then they're going to get onto maps that they simply cannot play because they don't own the DLC? Now, yes, of course, there'll be the option to buy the DLC, but I think that is a bit ridiculous, especially nowadays with how old World at War is. I imagine those DLCs are still priced at around £15 or £20, whatever they were priced at back in the day, even though they are at least 10, 15, maybe even 20 years old, depending on certain games. And I think that's far too much. I think that is absolutely ridiculous to be paying £15 for the price, like the 1/3 of the price of a modern day Call of Duty game for DLC. I think that's absolutely insane, and that needs to change. So not only does it need to change for the simple fact that World at War, for instance, it affects the matchmaking, that you cannot play the map, but you can matchmake the map and you can join the map, but you won't be able to play it. And that will just cause you to leave over and over again until you find a lobby where, you know, you own the actual maps, which of course will be the base maps that come with the game. So that's one reason why the old COD maps need to be free. Is simply for the sake of World at War. I don't know if it happens in other Call of Duty games, but I know more specifically than anything, it does happen in World at War. Next up, the other reason that I think this should change is... Oh, wow, I cannot believe that he didn't die. Anyway, more specifically, and I think this is the best reason, and I think everyone will agree with this reason, these games are so old that the idea of them coming to Game Pass is so that people can go back and play these games. It's obviously, these games, once they come to the Game Pass, are going to revive the player base. They're going to make them more playable. They're not necessarily going to fix the cheating issues, which it doesn't seem very evident that they actually are going to fix before they come to the Game Pass. Maybe I'll be wrong. Maybe they'll actually do a major update to fix this. Who knows? But as far as I'm aware right now, the old Call of Duties, we're just going to have to accept that, yeah, they're a little bit broken. They're going to have their issues. They're going to have hackers. They're going to have people who have free, you know, modded 360s, JTAG Xboxes, you name it. It's going to happen. But one thing that I do expect is with, you know, the games becoming more popular, being more revived. Let's take, for example, the last game that I played, Advanced Warfare, which I know isn't one of the most popular titles that people were expecting for old Call of Duty games to come back. But I would say that, you know, it is a game that people would want to go back and play, and simply can't enjoy because there is lack of players on there. So the old Game Pass is going to obviously revive that and make it so people can, you know, make the games more popular than that. And one thing that's going to help with that too is if they made the DLC free. The DLC being free would give people the experience of not only being able to go back and play the games because the player base would be revived in that, the ability to play everything, including myself. I would love to go back and play games like maps and zombie maps and multiplayer, zombies, you name it. Maps that I never got to experience, even though I enjoyed some of these games in their prime. I enjoyed Black Ops 1 in its prime. I enjoyed Black Ops 2 in its prime, Black Ops 3. All these amazing games that I never got to experience certain DLCs simply because I either didn't have the money to pay for it, or I was a child, and, well, I imagine some of you were probably in the same boot, so that you probably didn't have parents that would be willing to spend 15 to 20 pounds on DLC for a game that they'd already paid for. You know, you probably paid about 50, 60 pounds for the game for you. And then on top of that, paying for DLC. I'm sure most parents probably wouldn't understand and would probably disagree with buying £15, £20 worth of content on top of paying for the game. But that's why I think it should be free now, because it would make the experience even more fun for people like myself. I'm sure there's many people out there like that. In fact, I want you guys to let me know down below in the comments, when you played these Call of Duty games, Black Ops 1, Black Ops 2 and that, did you ever buy DLC? If you did, what DLCs did you buy? Did you buy every DLC? I want to know. I'm quite intrigued to know how many of you actually bought DLCs for these Call of Duty games back in the days. But anyway, it will also not only help those who never got to experience the prime of playing the DLCs from Black Ops 1, 2, MW2, MW3, you name it. On top of that, it's going to help those who actually own and bought the DLC. And again, this is something that I want to see comments about down below. Those of you who do own DLC for these old games, would you welcome people getting the DLC for free? Because yes, of course you spent and bought the DLC back in the day. Yes, it's kind of, you know, you've bought 15 to 20 pounds worth of content. Should other people have to do that? But I think a lot of you will agree that it should be free, because the DLC you paid for, because of how unlikely it is that people have that DLC, you won't be able to enjoy the DLC that you bought all those years ago, simply because not many people will have that DLC. And I couldn't imagine a lot of people, with how these games are, they're a bit broken, they're not in the best working order, but they're still okay, you know, and that's why people want to see them come to the Game Pass to be able to play them, you know, have revived player bases and stuff, and maybe they'll fix the issues, who knows. But having people to have the DLC for free will allow those who bought the DLC back in the day to be able to experience their DLC simply because other people will have that DLC. Yes, they'll get it for free. Yes, they won't have to pay for it kind of like you did back in the day. But I think a lot more people would be more happy to be able to experience the DLC they had. Is there someone cheating? Oh, no, he was just... Okay, the UAV wasn't updating very quickly. But yeah, you'd be able to experience the DLC that you paid for, unlike now, where at the moment, it's very unlikely, even though you paid for that DLC all them years ago, you probably wouldn't be able to experience your DLC that you paid for. And I think a lot of you would want to do that, want to share zombies maps with people, you know, and play zombies with people. The zombies is going to be the biggest thing, I think, for everyone. And I don't know, that's where I think it gets a little bit iffy. I think the zombie stuff is where Activision, Microsoft probably won't go down that route of giving people free DLC from these old Call of Duty games, just because the zombies has so much replayability, even though it's so old. Multiplayer, a little bit different, you know, they're just maps, really. There's nothing too crazy. Of course, with Black Ops 2, you got the Peacekeepers, so you got some DLC weapons. Same with Call of Duty Ghosts. You know, we're not going to just stick to the classics that everyone knows and loves. You know, Advanced Warfare, Infinite Warfare, you name it. Whether or not these games had DLCs and stuff, I can't remember now. Like, I can't remember when map packs specifically stopped in Call of Duty. But I think any Call of Duty game, so I think it's more specifically should happen when a Call of Duty game is added to the Game Pass, that Call of Duty's DLC should be free at that given time, like for eternity, right, forever. As long as that Call of Duty game is on the Game Pass, it should be free. I don't think, well, I do think in general it should be outright free, but I think more than likely the case would be that the old CODs that get added to the Game Pass, their DLC will be free, and those that own the Game Pass will be the people that get it for free. I love it if everyone just got DLC for free, but I think more than likely the case, if we were to get anything from Microsoft and Activision in this, is that the old COD DLC should be free if that game is on the Game Pass and if you own the Game Pass. So essentially, the Game Pass pays for the DLC. I don't see what's wrong with that. I think that's a great way of incentivizing people, not only to get the Game Pass to, you know, be able to actually play these old Call of Duty games, but on top of that, getting free DLC would be fantastic. And I do believe, correct me if I'm wrong, this has actually happened with some games that have been added to Game Pass. Like, DLCs have come along with those games. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not sure what game specifically, but I do remember scrolling through and seeing that some games do actually have DLCs that are free along with actually being added to the Game Pass. And I think that's fantastic. And I think that's something that should happen with old Call of Duty games. And again, I know a lot of you are going to agree with me in the comments down below. And again, I want you guys to leave your thoughts and opinions down below. What do you think, though? How do you think it should be done? What games do you specifically think it should happen to? Do you think like the way I think it should happen, which is the old COD, whatever old COD is added at that specific time, you know, because I imagine they're going to release them one by one. If they release all these games at once, fantastic. Even better, you know, I get a choice of what to pick and play at a certain point. But the DLCs, I think, just need to be free in general. Like, as if you have the Game Pass, you get the old COD that, you know, you want to play and stuff. But on top of that, you get the DLC for that game to be able to play, so that you can fully experience Call of Duty and everything that it had to offer for that game back in the day. I can't see how that's an issue. I think, you know, Activision really got to, like, let it go on this one. I know they'll probably sit there and think, maybe this is how we'll get more money, possibly, you know, and get people to spend money on our old Call of Duty games. I think that's going to be the issue. I think Activision will want to make bank off of these old games. I don't see how they're just going to want to put them on the Game Pass for free. You know, some people on top of that, you know, are probably going to specifically play these games more than the modern games. It's not going to massively end, you know, modern Call of Duty games. Everyone's going to buy the next Call of Duty, I imagine. Most people will. I will, of course, you know, for you guys to, you know, share content and stuff. But it will take players away. Some people will play the old classic games if they're revived, you know, well, if the games are actually playable and enjoyable. And I don't know if they'll get put off by adding DLC, because I think DLC would be a big one for people. Having DLC added would definitely have people flocking to the old games to experience the stuff, like I said, that they never ever got to experience. So, yeah, I'm intrigued to know. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down below about that. But on top of that, I just think, as a creator, the people who back in the day created, whether or not they're at these studios anymore, I don't know who, you know, works at Treyarch and stuff anymore, from people like Vonderhaar, etc., that all this content that they made back in the day never ever got the chance or light of day to be able to actually be played by. I think that should change. I think they should have the ability for their art and their work to be played by everyone, to be enjoyed by everyone. There are probably some classic maps that are so good, but people didn't get to experience because they couldn't afford it back in the day. And I think that needs to change. I think that simply needs to change, and I think the Game Pass is the best opportunity to do that now, to be able to allow people to play these maps, experience these maps, and help revive these games even more. So, on top of that, I think as well, the player base for, like, you know, the people who own the DLCs, I don't know how it affects them. That's one thing I would say as well. I know in some games you get the choice of whether or not you can install your DLCs. I'm not sure if that's the case with all the old Call of Duty games. But I do think the issue will arise that for the people who do have those DLCs, if they are forced to install them DLCs, they might have a hard time matchmaking. Simply because the matchmaking pool back then was different. If you were one of those people who owned the DLCs, you got put in a map pool with other people who had the DLC. And it's more than likely people who are going to end up playing these games from the Game Pass aren't going to have the DLC. So I think just all in all, this is a win-win if they were to put make the DLCs free for all the old Call of Duty games, not just some of them, not just, you know, handpick which games and this and that. I think when that game specifically comes, say it be Black Ops 1, all the maps, all the zombies maps, all the multiplayer maps, all just comes back and is completely free for everyone to play. There's no reason for Activision and Microsoft to be wanting to make more money than these games already did back in the day. This is supposed to be something that I think the community is supposed to just enjoy. Yes, you have to pay for the Game Pass. Yes, that is a cost, of course, but it's a very, very light cost. It's like £15 a month or something, and you'd be able to play any of the old Call of Duty games when they add them, of course, whenever that is specifically. And on top of that, adding the DLC would just, I don't know, I think it'd be a way for Activision to give back to the community sort of thing, which is saying one thing, right? Of course, asking Activision to give back to the community a little bit. But I think now would be a good time more than ever. You know, they don't need to make more money from these games. These games had their payday. These were the most played games, the most bought games. More specifically, Black Ops 1, for instance, is still to this day, I believe, the most installed or most played or most downloaded or most bought Call of Duty of all time. So there's going to be a lot of people wanting to come back on here and play, and maybe don't play because the player base isn't, you know, as strong as it used to be. But on top of that, maybe they're looking for that incentive that, hey, the player base gets to, you know, improve, like, there'll be more people playing. And, again, free DLC, right? Why would you not? I don't see how in a world that free DLC shouldn't happen. I don't see why it wouldn't happen. So, yeah, it's one of those. I think old COD will benefit massively from it. I think the player base will benefit from it. And I think just the community in general would massively appreciate Microsoft, Activision for doing this. And what a better way than to have a reveal event for the new Call of Duty game, you know, and then talk about old COD coming to, you know, Game Pass and stuff. And then also on top of that, announcing that you have given free DLC to everyone as long as they own the Game Pass. Let me know if you think different. Let me know if you think, you know, that it should just be free in general. But the cost of some of this DLC is insane, though. Like, it's £15 to £20 still. That's absurd. These games are far too old to be, you know, warranting paying for DLC at this point. And I simply think now is the time, better than ever, to make DLC free for these old Call of Duty games, you know? And for me specifically, I'll talk about like my experience. There are zombies maps that I grew up watching on YouTube, watching other people play, and unfortunately I wasn't able to play. I would love to go back and play like all the classic Black Ops 1 DLC maps for zombies. Same with multiplayer. I can't remember what the map's specifically called, simply because I never obviously had it installed or played it, so the chance to be remembering what it was called. But there was that golf course map. It was an unbelievably good-looking map. I would love to go back and play it, just experience it, and see how good of a map it was. And, you know, I think, again, it gives everyone, not just the people who are looking to play these games that never ever got to experience Black Ops 1, Black Ops 2, etc., also the people who owned these games back in the day and didn't have the DLC, get a brand new, fresh experience. Yes, they've played, you know, this game, they know how the game works, they've used the AUG, they've used the FAMAS, but playing different maps from multiplayer, from zombies, and just feeling like you can go back and experience the game all over again because you've got new and amazing stuff to play, would massively entice people to go back and play these games and just enjoy themselves. And, you know, I'm sure there's many of you out there who've got a group of friends to go back and experience, you know, playing zombies, four players, you know, like you did back in the day, back in the nighttime. You'd load up zombies, play with your three other friends, and just go back and play a zombies map you never experienced before. We all grew up playing Kino on that, of course, but how cool would it be to go play like Call of the Dead or something, or some zombies map that you've never played before? I think that'd be amazing, and this is why I think, for the many reasons that, like I said, it would be it would be good for those who have never owned the DLC to have a new, fresh experience. It's quite simply the games are so old that why should they be made to be purchased for anyway? On top of that, players who are, you know, wanting to use the DLC that they already own can't until other people own that DLC. And again, the likelihood of people buying that DLC with it being like £15 to £20 is very unlikely. So making it free is a benefit to those who own the DLC, don't own the DLC, the people who've never played these Call of Duty games before. It's a massive win-win, and I think it needs to happen. I don't think there's in any way, shape, or form a case that needs to be made to say that old Call of Duty DLC needs to be free when these games are added to Game Pass. And again, for me, I specifically think it'd make more sense that if you own the Game Pass, you get the DLCs for free. I highly doubt they'll ever make it free just flat outright. Would be great if they did. But quite simply, I think the more likelihood is they'll add these to the Game Pass, and at the same time, they should make the DLC free for that Call of Duty when it is added to the Game Pass. But I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Leave your thoughts and comments down below about what you think about today's video, about your thoughts about how COD DLC should work for these old Call of Duty games. And as well, I thought I'd add at the end as well, I think any COD DLC pre-MW 2019, so anything MW 2019 and after, I don't think should be free. I still think that should be purchased if there's, of course, DLC to be purchased, you know, like store bundles, etc. But anything pre-MW 2019, I think, should be absolutely free to anyone who owns the Game Pass and owns that game, or whatever game that is on the Game Pass. So let me know your thoughts and opinions down below. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did, leave a comment, leave a like, subscribe, notifications on. I'll catch you guys in the next video. Goodbye.